Have you ever noticed that you're always trying to manifest during certain moments, when you're visualizing, repeating affirmations, or setting intentions? What if the truth is that manifestation never actually stops? What if you're already shaping your reality every single second, whether you're aware of it or not? That's the part most people overlook. Manifestation isn't something you switch on during a meditation session or while writing in a journal. It's an ongoing process that continues throughout your entire day. Every moment you spend thinking, reacting, believing, or interpreting your experiences contributes to the reality you're creating. The real issue isn't that people don't know how to manifest. It's that they're doing it unconsciously. Every emotional reaction you repeat sends a message. Every assumption you make, without questioning it, becomes part of the blueprint your mind follows. Every story you continue telling yourself about your life, your relationships, your finances, or your future slowly becomes the lens through which you experience reality. Most people believe they only manifest when they're intentionally focusing on what they want. But your subconscious doesn't stop working when you stop visualizing. Your nervous system doesn't pause until your next affirmation session. Your internal state keeps communicating constantly. This is why manifestation often feels confusing. Someone spends 10 minutes every morning imagining their dream life. They feel inspired, hopeful, and motivated. But the rest of the day is filled with doubt, frustration, fear, comparison, impatience, and old habits. By evening, they've spent far more time reinforcing their old identity than embodying the new one they were trying to create. And identity almost always wins. Reality tends to organize itself around the person you consistently believe yourself to be, not around the person you briefly imagine becoming. From the perspective of neuroscience, this makes perfect sense. Your brain is designed to predict reality based on patterns it has learned over time. Instead of evaluating every situation from scratch, it relies on familiar expectations. Those predictions influence your emotions, your decisions, your attention, and even the opportunities you notice. Most of your daily responses aren't carefully chosen. They're automatic. They're built from years of conditioning. Whatever feels familiar to your nervous system eventually becomes your default experience of life. That's why changing external circumstances often feels so difficult. Even when new opportunities appear, people frequently respond through old emotional patterns because those patterns feel safe, even if they no longer serve them. Spiritual traditions have described this idea in different ways for centuries. Some call it vibration, others call it consciousness. Some simply describe it as living unconsciously. Regardless of the language, the principle remains remarkably similar. Life continuously reflects the state you repeatedly occupy. The challenge is that most people only pay attention to their emotional highs. They celebrate moments when they feel optimistic, grateful, inspired, or excited. But they rarely examine the quieter emotional states that dominate the majority of their lives. Those ordinary moments matter far more than most people realize. The moments when you're waiting in traffic, scrolling through your phone, working without enthusiasm, feeling slightly irritated, quietly expecting something to go wrong, thinking nothing ever changes for you. Those unnoticed moments quietly reinforce your internal baseline, and that baseline becomes your strongest signal. Manifestation doesn't primarily happen during emotional peaks. It happens during emotional defaults. The emotional atmosphere you naturally return to when nothing special is happening carries tremendous influence because it's repeated thousands of times. This also explains why lasting change often feels slower than expected. It's not necessarily because the universe is withholding your desires. It's because your internal reference point keeps returning to the same familiar place, the same expectations, the same emotional patterns, the same interpretations, the same identity, and reality faithfully reflects that consistency. Many people assume they're blocked, They believe something outside themselves is preventing progress, but more often than not, nothing is actually blocking them. They're simply becoming incredibly skilled at recreating the same internal experience every day. Consistency is powerful. The question is whether that consistency is supporting the future you want or preserving the past you've become familiar with. Once this realization begins to settle in, something important changes. You stop treating manifestation like a technique that only happens during specific exercises. Instead, you begin observing the countless unconscious moments that shape your experience every day. You become curious instead of forceful. Awareness slowly replaces effort. Observation begins replacing control. And that's where genuine transformation starts. You can't consciously change something you never notice. The moment you become aware of the patterns you've been repeating, automatically, those patterns lose some of their unconscious power. Awareness creates space, and in that space, new choices become possible. But before any lasting transformation can happen, there's something even deeper we need to understand. The signal you're constantly broadcasting isn't created by your strongest positive thought. It isn't determined by your biggest goal. And it certainly isn't defined by the words you occasionally repeat. The signal that shapes your experience is much quieter than that. It's your emotional baseline. It's the internal atmosphere your mind and body naturally return to when life becomes ordinary. That invisible baseline quietly influences everything, from the way you interpret conversations to the opportunities you recognize, the risks you're willing to take, and even the possibilities you believe belong to someone like you. Most people never notice it because it feels normal. But normal doesn't always mean true. Sometimes it simply means familiar. And familiarity has an incredible ability to shape the reality we continue experiencing every single day. This is where many people become discouraged. They repeat affirmations every day, visualize the future they want, and genuinely hope something will change. Yet weeks or even months pass, and life appears almost identical. It isn't because affirmations are useless, it's because words alone cannot replace an identity that has been practiced for years. Every affirmation is filtered through the person who is saying it. If your deeper identity doesn't recognize the statement as believable, your nervous system immediately detects the mismatch, like something you're trying to convince yourself of. And the harder you try, the stronger the gap often becomes. Think about it this way. If someone secretly believes they're unworthy of success, repeating, "I deserve abundance," may create temporary motivation. But underneath, the old emotional program continues running. The subconscious doesn't respond to repetition alone. It responds to familiarity. From a neurological standpoint, identity isn't changed by language. It's strengthened through repeated emotional experiences and consistent behavior. Your brain trusts evidence more than promises. It believes what you repeatedly live, not simply what you repeatedly say. If your daily experience continues reinforcing stress, struggle, self-doubt, or scarcity, those patterns remain the dominant reference point. The words may sound different, but the emotional foundation stays the same. Spiritually, this is where many manifestation teachings become oversimplified. People begin believing that speaking positive words automatically changes reality. But language is only one small part of the equation. The deeper signal comes from the state you're living in every ordinary moment. How you respond when no one is watching, how you think while waiting for results, how you treat yourself after making a mistake, how you interpret silence, uncertainty, or temporary setbacks. Those quiet moments reveal your true baseline. Many people unknowingly use affirmations as emotional escape. Or a few minutes they feel hopeful. Then they return to the same assumptions they've always carried. The temporary feeling fades because nothing underneath has actually shifted. Eventually, they conclude manifestation doesn't work. In reality, their identity simply remained unchanged. There's another subtle reason affirmations often lose their power. Many are focused entirely on the future. I will become successful. My dream life is coming. Everything is on its way. While those statements sound encouraging, they also reinforce the feeling that what you want still exists somewhere ahead of you. The emotional message becomes one of waiting, and waiting quietly reinforces the experience of not yet having. The subconscious pays attention to that emotional message far more than the actual words. This doesn't mean affirmations should be abandoned. It means they become powerful only after they reflect an identity that's already beginning to stabilize. Words are strongest when they describe a reality you're genuinely growing into, not when they're trying to overpower a reality you still emotionally believe. That's why one simple sentence can completely transform one person's life, while another person repeats hundreds of affirmations without noticeable results. The difference isn't the sentence. The difference is the identity behind it. Real manifestation begins the moment you stop fighting your internal state and start understanding it. Instead of constantly correcting yourself, you begin observing yourself. You notice recurring emotional patterns without criticizing them. You become curious about your automatic reactions instead of trying to suppress them. That awareness quietly changes everything, because what becomes fully conscious can no longer control you in exactly the same way. The goal isn't to eliminate every negative thought. The goal is to stop unconsciously identifying with every thought that appears. Awareness creates separation. Separation creates choice. And choice creates a completely different future. This is why genuine transformation happens after the words end, after the visualization is over, after the meditation finishes, when ordinary life begins again. Who are you when nothing exciting is happening? How do you interpret an unanswered message? A delayed opportunity? An unexpected setback? Those ordinary reactions reveal far more about your future than your best moments of motivation ever could. And that leads us to perhaps the most important realization of all. The greatest influence on your reality isn't your goals. It isn't your affirmations. It isn't even your strongest desire. It's the identity you quietly return to every single day. Because your identity isn't something you occasionally perform. It's something you continuously live. And whatever you consistently live eventually becomes the reality you experience.